You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to The Spirit Dimension with your host, Kerry Greenaway, right here on Parasearch Radio.
Good evening and welcome to The Spirit Dimension. My name is Kerry Greenaway and tonight we talk about all things paranormal, unexplained, spiritual, esoterical, all kinds of subjects we cover on a Sunday evening. Now tonight I'm actually joined in the studio by the amazing Rob Lee. So good evening, Rob. How are you?
I'm not too bad. I'm not feeling quite as amazing as your description of me there. There we go. I'd go with something more mundane, like the perfectly acceptable Rob Lee rather than the amazing Rob Lee. That'd be my superhero name, Mr. Perfectly Acceptable.
Well, you write a blog called The Skeptic's Boot.
I do.
And you wrote a blog recently about something that has gone viral on Twitter recently, hadn't you?
Yes. I'm sure most of your listeners are familiar with the Dear David saga. Probably a few of them have been following it as it's unfolded. So I wrote a blog on that. Obviously, it came to my attention in early August, but I waited a little bit to write anything about it because I wanted to see how it developed. And sure enough, it went kind of the way I thought it would, which would be he started posting quote-unquote evidence of the phenomenon he was experiencing, which obviously then when someone starts posting some kind of physical evidence or what he purports to be physical evidence, then it's a point where you can get your teeth into it then and really examine the claims on offer, which he hadn't up to that point offered much that you could really, delve into.
Not really. It was very, as you know, with Twitter, you only get a certain amount of characters, so you get sound bites of conversation. So you build up like a soundbite picture. Now, the guy we're talking about is actually a New Yorker. His name is Adam Ellis. He writes under Moby_Dickhead, which says quite a lot in my view.
Says a lot, yeah. I think so.
He's actually a writer for BuzzFeed.
Yeah, which I think that is a big element of this story, and it's something that if you read the various reports about it that have appeared on other websites, it's something that's not mentioned a lot, the fact that he's a reporter for BuzzFeed, because I think it damages his credibility a lot, because I don't know what your opinion is on BuzzFeed or the opinion of your listeners, but in my opinion, BuzzFeed is like lowest of the low clickbait.
Yeah, it's a bit like the Sun newspaper.
Yeah, I mean, it's most of the content tends to be, what Game of Thrones character are you, or what Harry Potter in fact, funnily enough, saying that, one of Adam's earlier articles is, are you a wizard or a muggle? So that tells you the kind of content that he's been writing before this Dear David saga developed. It's essentially, he does cartoon strips, which I'm sure some people find amusing. I thought they were okay. He's certainly got, he's certainly a good cartoonist, and mainly quizzes. And in fact, the Dear David saga started as a quiz there. My apartment's being haunted. What should I do next? And it was an opinion poll. And I just think that says a lot about the story, because obviously the first thing you'll find with someone writing for BuzzFeed, especially a BuzzFeed staffer, which he is the idea of a BuzzFeed article is that headline gets you in. You see it on your Twitter, you see it on your Facebook, and you click on the article. So it's got to be something that draws you in. And I think that's something that he's exploiting as the story develops on his Twitter feed. I think he's very good at drawing people into a narrative. I'd actually say it's probably one of the only complimentary things I'm going to say about him in the next hour. But I do think he's got a knack of drawing people in. I think that probably comes from his BuzzFeed experience.
I was going to say, from the job he does, he's actually very, very good at his job, because he definitely does do that.
Yeah, I think so. But the Dear David, at the moment, as it stands, his Dear David post is his most popular post. So you can see that it's something that's caught on. Although he's only wrote about it on BuzzFeed once, he's not gone back to that well as of yet. But I think it's only a matter of time, to be honest, before he does. He's mostly concentrated on his Storify page, which he updates quite infrequently. So the main place to follow it is his Twitter.
Exactly. To give you guys an idea, the Storify page that he set up to follow this story started on the 7th of August. And get these figures, okay? He had 75,570 likes on this one post. He had 54,683 retweets and 2,997 comments. And the post that the Twitter post that this was about was, so my apartment is currently being haunted by the ghost of a dead child, and he's trying to kill me. That gives you an idea of the interest in this case, which is why we're talking about it tonight, because it goes on. This isn't just like a one-post thing. This is a whole story that's an ongoing thread with Dear David. And it starts off where he starts with dreams, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's right. And what I find quite interesting about it as well, and touched on this in the blog post I wrote, it's unfolding like a really stereotypical horror movie. So you always have that section, it's a horror movie trope. You always have that section in a modern horror movie where the protagonist meets up with someone who's got some hidden knowledge of this ghost that he's experiencing, and the purpose of this person in the story is to explain the rules of the ghost. So in his case, he has a dream encounter with a young girl who explains to him that the rules of Dear David are I can ask him 2 questions, but if you ask him a 3rd question, then he sets out to kill you, or he comes out of your dreams into reality. So it's got a very horror movie vibe. There's elements of Nightmare on Elm Street there. There's almost elements of the Candyman, like you say the name a certain amount of times in the mirror, and which obviously is based on the Bloody Mary urban legend. Yeah. And Dear David appears when you ask him 3 questions. So it's got a lot of horror movie tropes, and it's developing like a poor potboiler horror. Starts off with dreams, and then this encounter with someone who explains the rules to him. Then he fouls up the rules and begins to experience, a limited amount of phenomena, and then obviously it starts to escalate. So I think I think what he's doing is actually quite interesting, because I think he's taking a medium that we don't necessarily associate with storytelling, and he's attempting to tell a long form horror story in a way with that medium, which is quite interesting. And in the hands of a better writer, it would probably be quite enthralling. But obviously, the issue I have with it isn't so much that he's trying to do that; it's the fact that he's passing it off as real.
Yes.
And that would be my issue. I don't really care about storytelling. Who doesn't love a horror story or a ghost story? I think we all do. I think that's part of the reason we all get involved in the field, is because we love stories.
Yeah.
But the problem is he's trying to pass this off as real events, and I think by where he's come to the stage that he's at now, where he's, in my opinion, faking evidence, then that takes him from someone trying to tell a story to someone who is trying to perpetrate a hoax. And I've got an issue with that, and I'm sure a lot of people do.
And this is where we step into... This is why we're looking at this case, actually, because it is incredibly interesting how it's progressing, and it is incredibly interesting the interest that the public, or, the Twitter feed and the Facebook feeds are showing on it. And it is incredibly interesting from a psychological point of view and a ghost story evolution point of view. But it is quite easy to pull apart. And there are things that I thought was quite important to actually highlight to people who, when looking at any piece of footage, that there are basic things that highlight. And reading your blog has actually brought things to my attention that I hadn't noticed before in regards to footage. So I thought we'd talk about this because, as I say, the whole situation is incredibly interesting to me. Now, this guy, Adam, actually says he suffers from sleep paralysis, which is a known psychological phenomenon, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's not to be downplayed as well, people who suffer from sleep paralysis. It's a horrible affliction. I don't know if you've ever suffered from it, Kerry, but I had it at a particularly stressful time in my life, and it was harrowing. And I'm a nasty skeptic who doesn't believe in ghosts or anything like that, and it was really disturbing, really harrowing. Fortunately, when that stressful period of my life transitioned into something a bit less stressful, it went away, which I was really grateful for. But I could see how someone who does believe in spirits and the paranormal would find that really oppressive. It was horrible. The feeling of helplessness and being pinned down and not being able to move. And, for me, it was someone was coming into my room. Often it had developed from them being downstairs, and I could hear drawers opening, and then they'd come up the stairs and they'd come into the room, and I'm powerless to move. And it was really terrifying, and it carries over into your waking, that initial waking period as well, where you're kind of like, oh my God, there's someone in my room, and then you start to realise that it was, at the time I wasn't aware of sleep paralysis, but I just believed it was, a dream. But it's only later, when I've investigated skepticism more and causes of the paranormal, that I've started to look into that more. But it can be a terrible affliction, and if he is suffering from sleep paralysis, I do have a lot of sympathy for him, because it's not necessarily an easy thing. But that's it's strange the way he mentions that at the beginning because he lays that out before the ghost events really start to happen. But obviously the things that have come later aren't connected to sleep paralysis in any way, shape or form. The kind of phenomena he's describing aren't really connected to sleep paralysis anymore. It's moved on, hasn't it? It's developed. Oh,
very much so. I mean, his first kind of posts regarding this was like, one of his tweets was he started appearing in dreams, but I think he's crossed over into the real world now, which sounds like you said, very Freddy from Nightmare on Elm Street. And then the second one was, the first time I saw him, I was experiencing sleep paralysis and saw a child sitting in the green rocking chair at the foot of my bed. Yeah. So he's actually mixing real life phenomena like sleep paralysis with experiences that he's saying he's having, which gives it a level of reality. For anybody that's had sleep paralysis, they can resonate with that.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people offering him advice and so forth on sleep paralysis. And I believe that possibly initially when this started, that maybe he was suffering from that phenomena, but I think what he's done is he's seen the attention it's generated on Twitter. He's seen the attention it's garnered through BuzzFeed and the media interest in it as well, because there's been a lot of media attention, especially online, towards it, that it's now he's realised that this is marketable. This is something that can get him attention. And obviously, as a writer and an artist, what you're constantly struggling for is someone to pay attention to your work and what you're doing. I mean, he's got close to 500,000 followers on Twitter now. So I don't know what he was at before this saga developed, but I'm sure it was much less than that. So, you know, as someone who's in that field, then this kind of attention is really valuable, especially to someone who has got a book coming out next year, which Adam does.
And there's your motive.
Quite possibly. I don't know what the book's going to be about. I know that he's got an empty URL at the moment, which has got links to Amazon pages and various other booksellers set up on the page, ready for the book to be published. Whether it's going to be a Dear David book, I'm not sure, but there's definitely something in the works. And obviously, to have that level of following on Twitter, to have that kind of media exposure, is going to help when it comes to the book's launch. So forgive me for being cynical rather than sceptical. I do think that is a factor in this whole unfolding saga.
And this is a classic example of cynicism over scepticism. But I'm the same as you.
Guilty.
I look at something like this and I go, well, he's obviously raising his profile incredibly fast. And like you said he's got an empty URL. And with those, it's all getting set up ready for the book release. And that, from a very cynical point of view, is how it's reading to me too. And I'm not half as sceptical as you are. Do you know what I mean? And even I can go, he's doing a really good job at raising his profile here. Yeah. And actually, when this first went viral, I did think, I wonder what's going on in the background there. I didn't realise he actually had a book coming out soon. And it will be interesting to see what the subject of the book is.
Yeah. Well, what bothered me was in one of his interviews, they asked him about a book, and he denied that he was writing a book. But you've got the URL there. You've got links to the book. I believe on his BuzzFeed authors page, it's got details about the book. So you are writing a book. It might not be a Dear David book, but you are writing some kind of book. And I would not be surprised if this book does well, that the follow up is some kind of Dear David type book. I would not be surprised about that at all, because if you look at the way it's developing, I think he's possibly tailoring it after the Slender Man, which was I'd say that's probably our first example of a viral monster. You know, a monster that went viral after it was created for a creepypasta story. Yes. So I think, if you look at the beats and the way it's developing, and one of the interesting things, you mentioned his followers on Twitter and the way they've engaged with it. If you look at his Twitter feed now, his followers do the work for him. Apart from the videos he's posted with specific things happening, his followers will take a photograph that he places on Twitter, and they will zoom in, they'll examine every inch of the photograph, they'll put it in Microsoft Paint, and they'll draw circles around what they believe is a face or what they believe is a figure. The most striking example, he posted a selfie of himself with a glass door behind him, and there are several versions where people have outlined a figure or a face in the glass door behind him. Obviously, what's at work there is pareidolia.
Yeah.
You zoom into a digital image close enough, and it would be more unusual if you couldn't highlight some random noise, some random visual data that doesn't look like a face. Obviously, the closer you get, the more pixelated it's going to become, and the more likely you're going to see something approaching a face or approaching a figure. And that's what's happening. He's posting photos up, and the people who are following him, who are really engaged with this story, they're doing the work for him. He doesn't have to fake images anymore, because he knows his followers will find something in those images that they can say is paranormal or a face. I've personally seen, I see nothing in his images at all. I think people are really grasping at straws and just zooming into just until they find something. They go, and if you continue, there's a paranormal investigator, Kenny Biddle, and what he calls that is anomaly hunting. And that's where a ghost hunter or a paranormal investigator will go out and they'll look for something unusual or something slightly out of the ordinary, and they'll say, right, okay, there's our ghost evidence. And if you go out looking for an anomaly, you're going to find it. And it's the same with a digital photograph. If you zoom in close enough to a digital image, you're going to find a face, you're going to find something that looks like a figure, just because of the nature of, how digital images are processed. And I think that's what's happening there. And he must be over the moon with that, because he doesn't have to worry about faking images and therefore being exposed, which I think he set himself up a little bit for a fall with the videos, but I'm sure we'll get to that in a minute.
That, yep.
Yeah. But with the images he's putting on, he doesn't have to risk being exposed by skeptics, because it's his fans who are saying, well, did you see this? Have you seen that? And he's just going, oh yeah, wow, I'm really creeped out now, guys. And he must be tickled pink by that. I can imagine for somebody who's faking a ghost phenomena, that's money in the bank. The fact that you've got followers who are doing that for you, it's amazing. Yeah.
I mean, Mark D's actually in the chat room, and he said you only need 3 dots in close proximity to make a face, 2 eyes, and a mouth.
Yeah. Spot on.
It's something as simple as that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's that old test where if you put the 2 dots and the semicircle on a page and ask someone what it is, very few people will say it's 2 dots and a semicircle. Most people will say that's a smiling face. Yeah. So we have evolved to see faces in random data, because that helps us recognise our parents at an infant stage. So it's part of our nature, it's part of our biology, and it's not unsurprising that's what happens when people look at photographs. And I'd say if you eliminated pareidolia as a cause, I'd say you'd eliminate possibly 70% of ghost photographs.
No, I completely agree with you. It was a phenomenon I came across very quickly when I started moving away from just a general interest and into investigating, was pareidolia, and that's audio as well as visual. Yeah. And how unreliable your eyes actually are.
That's right. I think one of the interesting things is it's not as popular as it was, but there are certain ghost hunting groups who'll use scrying. So they'll have a bowl of steaming water, and they'll say, let's see if the spirit manifests in the steam. And by golly, doesn't it always? because if you take enough images of Steve, eventually you will find something vaguely resembling a face or a figure. And I think, obviously, I think ghost hunting groups now, I think despite the mistakes they make sometimes, I think they're getting savvier. And I don't think there's a lot of groups doing that at the moment, but you certainly do come across them. And it's kind of, one of the first images I debunked when I started Skeptics Boot was a image that was placed on Facebook's largest ghost group, Ghost Spirits and Orbs, I think it's called. And it had upwards of about 500,000 members, I think. And one of the first images I debunked was a steam spaghetti bolognese, where there was a figure, a face in the steam, and I thought it was a steaming pile of something else. So that was one of the first images I kind of debunked. So it's interesting how strong that pareidolia connection is, and I think these fans they're all over that. So
that's true.
Without knowing what they're doing.
That's very true. However, in the spiritual world, we actually do something called scrying. And we also look at things like incense scrying, so the smoke from an incense, or flame scrying. You can look into a flame. But it is a form of seeing images within the smoke or the flame or whatever it is that you're scrying with, or divinations with is probably the more correct term. So there is that crossover where people have forgotten the actual facts of how your brain works in regards to your eyes. Yeah. And have sort of taken it one step further.
Yeah, that's right.
So there is a little bit of a crossover there, because the art of scrying or divination is a lot more ancient than what we know today about how the mind works.
Yeah, certainly. I don't doubt that. I think it's when you combine scrying with digital photography and taking rapid fire images of the steam. Eventually, it's going to form into something that vaguely approximates a face. So, I think it's when you combine those methods. I don't really know all that much about scrying other than what I've experienced ghost hunting groups posting on the internet. So. It'd be that element of it that I'd say, and very rarely is pareidolia offered as an explanation of the images that they're seeing.
As I said, there is that crossover, but that's when you work in a spiritual way, so you're working in a completely different way to what we're talking about in regard to paranormal evidence. So there is a difference, but I'm just trying to see how the evolution of how we used to work in the ancient times, bringing it forward, and then there's that crossover into making mistakes into what you see in regards to how we record what we see.
Yeah.
And the pareidolia that's there. Now, going back to the Dear David case, there was one thing that quite interested me. He set up motion detectors around his flat, and at midnight, every night, his cats would go to the front door and just sit there and stare at the front door. Now, for me, that is a signal that cats want to go out.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. My cats will go to the door, they'll stare at the door, they'll meow at the door when they want to go out. And it's not unheard of for cats to do this around a similar time at night. Now, you've got the other side of that is it would not be hard to get your cats to go to a door, especially an how do I describe it? An inter-room door, because clearly he lives in an apartment and there's a hallway outside. All you'd have to do is plate up a plate of cat food, place it outside the door, shut the door, and the cats will stir under the door at the cat food. The evidence... See, because what gets to me is the evidence that he's placing on the internet is in no way convincing to me at all. I think it's amazing the way people have, oh my God, cats are looking at a door. Yeah, well, have you ever had a cat? That's what they do. If they want to go out, they'll look at the door. If they can smell something outside, they'll go look at the door. I often think when people are saying their pets are behaving unusual, well, how do you define what's unusual behaviour for for a cat. My cats are bloody weird. There's a video and the whole idea of having motion detectors, it doesn't sit well with me. I don't believe it. Who sets up a motion detected camera with 2 cats in their house? It doesn't make sense. The cats would constantly be setting the camera off. You wouldn't pick up anything useful. It's like the idea of leaving a motion sensor is so when he's in bed or at work, the camera's triggered by some form of activity. But the camera's going to be triggered several times during the night by the cats wandering around.
True.
Several times during the day. So it just doesn't... I'm not convinced by it. And I think he's introduced the motion capture element to enforce the idea that he's not present when this activity is taking place. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that I don't believe he's got a motion detecting camera. I just don't believe it. I've seen an image from an app. Possibly he's got an app saying motion detected. But again, how could you, even if you did have a motion detecting camera, how can you differentiate between that and the cats? It's such an inconsistent and bizarre little saga. The Polaroids he placed on his Storify, that he showed on his camera phone that the hall light was on, mm-hmm. and then showed a Polaroid in the next instant that showed complete darkness in the hallway.
Yeah.
But we've no evidence that Polaroid was taken at the same time.
No.
We just don't know. And what got to me about it was, that's clearly not paranormal, because in the image you took where the light was coming through the doorway, there was light reflecting off the ground and there was light reflecting off the doorway. In the image where it's black in the hallway, there's no light reflecting in the doorway. So it's not as if that light was there and it's just not showing up on the camera. The light was turned off. You've gone out. You've turned the hallway bloody light off. That's all it takes. And the fact there's such just acceptance of what he's saying that people aren't going, because I think the problem sometimes we've got. I think a lot of skeptics looked at the stuff he was doing, and certainly I did this at first and went, God, this guy's a joker, you know. Obviously, none of this is what we'd call evidence, but then you've got to pay attention to it because of the amount of people that are accepting this as evidence. It doesn't matter whether you think it's nonsense or not. You've got to examine it because there's a huge sway of people that don't think it's nonsense. So you've got to examine it. And that's when, obviously, my very small part in this was when he placed video evidence of things supposedly happening. Videos are very easy to debunk. And that's when I decided to have a little go at doing that. But a still image can be difficult unless you can find the exact app that's been used to fake it, for example. But when you've got a video, there are always telltale signs of what somebody's done to fake that image. Or that footage, rather.
Very much so. Now, before we go on to that side of things, I want to talk to you about apps.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's used a sleep app where it records... Right. It basically, what it does is anytime there's a sound, it sort of clicks on to record.
Yeah.
So you can tape throughout the night, or you can put it on, and then anytime there's a sound, it records it. Am I right in thinking that's how it works? It doesn't record the whole night, so you're not getting like 8 hours of stuff to listen to. But
yeah,
you get,
that's right.
Every time there's a noise, it will just click on to record. So you get a certain amount of hits throughout the night. God, mine would be on all night. I tell you, the way I snore.
Mate, I know, exactly, yeah. Get you snoring.
How embarrassing.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. And again, if you've got cats wandering around your apartment, they are going to be setting that off several times a night. Now, there was one of the interesting pieces of sound footage that I heard. There's like a a snapping, clacking noise.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's possible. It sounded like a blind snapping to me when I listened to it. Now, I don't know about your cats, but my cats are constantly in the window when I'm asleep, and they wake me up playing with the blinds or, poking their head through the blinds. If he's got draw Venetian blinds in his bedroom or his living room, that could easily explain the clacking. And obviously there's a multitude of other things that it could be, but I think at the moment he doesn't seem to be making any kind of serious effort to actually legitimately investigate what's going on in his apartment. The first step I would take if I was in his position and I was genuine would be I'd ask a friend to look after the cats for a little while. Then I'd set up the motion cameras. Then I'd set up the sound recorders to eliminate the possibility of it being the cats. And he's no intention of doing that, which tells me that maybe he's not thinking clearly about it, but especially if I was scared that it was a ghost, I'd be wanting to eliminate the cats from the idea. Just even let them out at night. Just let them out of the apartment and see if the noises continue to happen. See if it ceases. And he just doesn't seem to intend to do it, which implies to me a little bit that he doesn't believe his own story, because he doesn't seem to be going to any lengths to get to the bottom of the issue.
No, I do agree with you. I mean, he's even... what he does is very clever. I mean, he's taken a photograph through a peephole before now as well, hasn't he?
Yeah.
You know, like the little spy holes in your door?
Yeah.
He's taken a photograph through that into the hallway because he thought that there was something out in the hallway.
Yeah.
Now, when I looked at that, and I'm the world's worst for spotting fake. I really am the world's worst for this. Even I thought, that's just a smudge on the other side of the glass. Yeah.
My opinion was similar, but I just thought, well, the glass on the peephole scratched.
All right.
That's what it looked to me like. Very fine scratching on the other side of the peephole, which obviously with an old peephole you do tend to get that kind of effect. But again, could just be a smudge. It's certainly, I haven't seen him, because despite the fact I'm a skeptic and I usually can debunk things I come across, not always, but usually, or I can at least offer an alternative explanation. He hasn't posted anything that I found even remotely challenging or remotely, right, okay, that's something that's going to take hours to kind of, get to the bottom of. It's very low grade. It's low hanging fruit. It doesn't take much to explain the phenomena that he seems to be reporting as evidence. There's a video of his cat batting at thin air, saying, well, this is, really strange behaviour. But, I mean, my cat chases flies, chases all sorts of small flying insects. And that's just what it appears to me, just a cat doing what a cat does. There was the image of, I don't know if you've seen the image of the cat jumping for seemingly no reason, and then the vase moves. In my opinion, what I thought when I instantly saw that is he's got a piece of fishing wire attached to the vase. He's intending to pull the vase, but the cat sat on the fishing wire. So his first attempt to pull the vase, the wire isn't taut because the cat sat on it. So he actually pulls the cat and the cat jumps out of the way. Then on his second attempt, because the cat's moved, the vase slides. I mean, he's been a bit more crafty because a lot of the videos we see, if you pause them, you watch them very slowly, you can pick up the fishing wire. It can be quite difficult, and it means watching it very slowly on Zoom, but you can pick up the fishing wire. He's got the camera position quite far away from the movement, which means it's unlikely to be picked up. But I think the cat jumping the way it did, I think it's a dead giveaway that it sat on something. And both cats are concentrated in the same area. So they've probably spotted the wire, because I don't know if you've got cats yourself, Kerry, but if there's something stringy or string-like on the floor, that will hold a cat's interest. And they both seem to be looking in the same area, as if, well, is there something there, is there not? And then he pulls it, and the cat jumps out of its skin because it's under its bloody ass. And that was my first impression of that video. It gave me a chuckle, if nothing else. So he's got a future in cat videos, I think. Big books on the internet, that.
Now, there is, he's posted several little videos, and one caught my eye. This is the one where the blue chair disappears.
Oh, gosh, right, okay, yeah.
And there's like a turtle shell that falls from a bookshelf, and there's a rocking chair that just rocks without any explanation at all. And, those things created a lot of interest and a lot of belief. I was shocked. There's a lot of belief in these things.
Yeah. That's the one that hit the tabloids.
Yes.
And it's interesting. The tabloids didn't present the footage the way Adam did. The tabloids chopped it and mixed it. So the way Adam presented it was as one continuous piece of footage. Look at these three events. So you had the three events where the chair starts rocking, the turtle shell falls, the blue chair disappears from the kitchen. Now, the tabloids chopped it up. They put, in the Sun version of the story, I believe it was, they put the chair rocking at the beginning, because that may be the most, the most, I don't want to say convincing, but the most compelling piece of the footage. Mm-hmm. Then they put the chair disappearing, then they put the turtle shell. But actually, when you take the video, you can actually establish a chronological timeline of what's occurred in the video. So my opinion is it when the chair was rocking, the turtle shell falls, then there's an edit. And there's a clear edit. The way I spotted the edit was the light in the kitchen, there's a natural light in the kitchen. The natural light is falling at the floor by the doorway. Mm-hmm. There's an edit, and then the natural light is at the back of the room. So quite a length of time has passed. That didn't happen instantly. Not only does the chair disappear, but there's a bit of disarray in the kitchen as well. So there's something looks like a towel flung over one of the cabinets, and the chair's gone. Now, I looked at those events and I kind of thought, well, okay, let's try and rationalise this a little bit. So he films the chair rocking. He then stops the footage. He moves the chair to gimmick the turtle shell, doesn't put the chair back, films the rest of the footage with the turtle shell dropping and the chair's disappeared. So you can almost fit it together logically. Now, I don't think he realised that he hadn't put the chair back, because it was actually, again, one of his eagle-eyed viewers that spotted, oh, well, look, not only does the turtle shell drop, but look in this bit, the blue chair's disappeared. Now, I think he didn't realise that he hadn't put the blue chair back. I think he got clumsy, and his followers, the people who are engaging with this story, came barreling in and gave him a get out of jail free card. He must have been, again, going, well, I majorly mucked up here, but luckily there's someone on the internet who's willing to go, well, that ghost boy's stealing your chairs. And suddenly his cock up, his mistake, is explained for him by one of his fans. They're doing all the work for him. All he has to do is keep filming this footage, keep posting images, and they will go and find paranormal events in that image.
Yeah.
What I'm interested to see is where he takes it next.
Right.
Because we've seen an escalation. So he first started talking about it.
Yeah.
He then moved to the images. Then he moved to videos. And in my opinion, outright fakery. Let's see. I'd be interested to see where he goes to next. Is he going to continue trying to fake images? Or, in my opinion, I think he might try and get a bit more technical. Video overlays maybe next, because he's got the perfect recipe for video overlays there. Because what you need with a video overlay is a steady shot. And he's got that steady shot with the camera he's set up in the living room. He could very easily do a video overlay there and overlay 2 pieces of footage with, obviously you have the empty room filled, then you film someone walking across the room, then you overlay those images so you've got those like figure walking through the room.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to do so.
We've seen it recently with the Most Haunted thing, haven't we, as well?
Yeah, that in my opinion, that's what the Most Haunted footage was. And there's a link to that Most Haunted footage as well. What put me onto the idea that the Most Haunted footage was a video overlay wasn't the footage itself, but it was the behaviour of Carl, what's his name? Carl...
Beatty.
He places the camera down, and I've never seen them do that on Most Haunted. He supposedly sees something. He places the camera down so it's got a shot of the doorway, a steady shot, which is what you need for a video overlay. Then he says, "Did you see that? We see this ghostly figure go up the stairs." Then he immediately picks up the camera and runs after it. Now, logically, what would be the reason for him placing that camera down? There's no logical reason to do it. And he actually asks Stuart Torville, during the footage he says, "Is that right? Is that right there? Is that where it is?" And points to the doorway. He's asking Stuart's opinion, is that the right shot of the stairway, so we can get this footage. It was a blatant out-and-out cheat, but it was their behaviour that immediately struck alarm bells. Now, the connection to this Dear David footage is, if you look at the Dear David footage, he's placed that green rocking chair right in front of his front door. Why would he place that rocking chair there? Why there? Because it blocks the doorway. It's not a convenient place, and it's never somewhere where you're going to naturally go and sit. Who sits right by the front door? It's drafty. You're in the way of the door. There's no reason for that chair to be there. It wasn't there in any of the previous photos he's taken of the apartment, and it's moved in all the videos he's placed since. So the chair isn't there anymore. I believe it was placed there specifically because that's a point in the flat where he knows that applying pressure to the floor, because I don't know if you've come across quote-unquote haunted rocking chairs before. There's a podcast called Squaring the Strange with Ben Radford, and his co-host is a guy called Pascal, but I forgot his second name. Now, one of Pascal's formative experiences as a child was a haunted rocking chair they had in their drawing room. The rocking chair would start to rock as soon as anybody approached it. The more people that approached it, it would rock more vigorously. What was causing that was a slight buckling in the wooden floor, because obviously these things, when they're placed on a floor, a rocking chair, it's placed in a very delicate equilibrium. So it only takes a slight disturbance to disturb that equilibrium and for it to start in motion. So in my opinion, he's placed it by the front door because he knows that applying pressure outside the front door, possibly someone standing on the outside of the front door, even possibly someone standing in the correct place in the apartment, will cause that floor to buckle slightly and cause the chair to start with a very gentle rocking. In my opinion, that's why he's done that. And we've got to, what highlights that is the behaviour. Why would he place that chair there? Why put it there? It's not convenient. He's put it there, and he alleges that he wasn't in the apartment when he filmed that footage. Mm-hmm. Now, if that chair's by the front door, he'd have banged that chair with the door when he left. How did he get out of the flat with that chair there and with the flat door in such close proximity? Does he expect us to believe he clambered over the rocking chair, a very light rocking chair, to get out? No. If it was there, he would have moved the chair, gone out, and obviously he can't move the chair back against the wall. It's going to remain out of the way of the door. So his story doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't place a chair there to begin with, and secondly, he wouldn't have been able to get out the flat, in my opinion, with the chair there, without banging the chair with the door.
Yeah, and this is where you have to look at the environment and actually think about it quite logically.
Yeah.
Just something simple like the placement of a chair in regards to a door.
Yeah.
And people have overlooked it.
Well, in my very limited experience of debunking ghost videos and debunking paranormal videos, the reason people don't spot the fakes is people look at... Magicians have got a term called misdirection. Mm-hmm. You look at where the magician wants you to look. When someone is faking a ghost video or a ghost photo, especially with videos, more prominent with videos, you are looking at the quote-unquote phenomena that you're meant to be looking at. When what you should be looking at is the whole environment. You should be looking at, if it's a video overlay, you should be looking at the clock, for example, which people very rarely pay attention to. Mm-hmm. But a big thing with video overlay is the clock will freeze for the time of the overlay and then start running again. You should be looking at any kind of reflections because they often won't match up. You'll see glitching there. And people don't. They focus on what they're supposed to be looking at when what you need to do is look at the whole frame and look at, like you said, the environment, Kerry. Mm-hmm. And that is often where you will find the telltale signs of fakery. You won't find it in the ghost, quote unquote. You'll find it in the environment around that ghost. Or you'll find it in just things you can't explain logically. I can't explain that camera being put down when he immediately picks it up to run after a ghost. I can't explain why Adam Ellis would place a rocking chair somewhere where it's going to be directly hit by a door as he goes out. Mm-hmm. When you look at these things, this is where it falls apart. And it's because people have very tunnel vision when they view this kind of footage. They'll look at it directly rather than looking at everything on the screen that's presented for them.
Yeah, because when you first look at something, you're looking for the supposed phenomena.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Especially, there are certain ones that if it's particularly creepy, people don't want to look at it. So they'll see that and go, oh, switch it off. And then they'll share it on their Facebook or their Twitter. And obviously it forms a chain. The word viral is very apt for this kind of footage. It forms a chain where you have people watching it, not paying attention until it falls into the hands of a skeptic who, to debunk something like that, it's not easy. I find myself, it's the funny thing where people accuse me of dismissing things out of hand. It couldn't be further from the truth, because if I'm looking at a piece of video footage, I'll study that for hours to get an answer. And obviously that's probably a lot more time than someone who's convinced by it dwells on it. So it's almost, rather than dismissing things out of hand, it's almost as if people accept things out of hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
they
agree
accept
with
it
that.
without too much probing.
I mean, the Dear David thing has, he's evolved it. He's had bruises at night. So he's gone to sleep, woken up with an unexplained bruise. So he's put that down to David, particularly if he's had a weird dream. He's even put down his local coffee shop that shut down. He looked into the coffee shop because for some reason it was open. There was a chair, not a rocking chair, but a chair. Yeah. And he said, oh, isn't it strange that this dear David first appeared in a chair, and the only thing that's left in this abandoned, coffee shop is now this chair, and and then he goes back and it's shuttered. Well, that's a clear out job, and he just happened to be there when they were sort of like not really around.
Yeah.
He's also had an unmarked phone calls, I can't remember the right word. Yeah. I've had hundreds of those. That's generally a cold calling computer system that's calling you. And he's linking all these sort of things into this case, which if you took as individual situations, you wouldn't find them weird. You wouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, it's anomaly hunting again, isn't it? It's looking for things that are supposedly out of the ordinary. I mean, the example you discussed about the green chair in the abandoned building, I thought that was one of the most bizarre claims that I've ever encountered when looking at the paranormal. So you're saying, because there's a green chair in an abandoned building, this is somehow... And he says the chair's green. It doesn't look green to me. To you, Kerry?
No,
because maybe my eyes are playing tricks on me, but it doesn't look green to me. And what, you found a chair? Oh, well, clearly this must be some deadly paranormal infestation. Call the exorcist immediately. What, there's a chair in an abandoned building? Jesus Christ. I just thought that was really, really bizarre. And it makes me wonder, when he puts that sort of stuff on, it makes me wonder, is he just having a big laugh about this? Is it just a complete wind-up? Because that kind of thing, who's really going to be convinced by that? And it makes me wonder if, rather than a hoax, this is a prank. Because I think it would seem to mark out someone who's thinking to themselves, what can I get away with? What can how far can I push it before people say, okay, this is rubbish? Mm-hmm. And that's what it struck me as.
Okay, well, the last post that on his storyfire.com site, which I have shared into the website in case you're interested in seeing the evolution of this particular story, was actually on the 29th of August. So it's a little while ago now.
Yeah, he's gone very quiet.
He's gone incredibly quiet.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder what he's doing.
Well, I looked on his Twitter, and it looks like, without being accused of being his stalker, I believe he's in China at the moment, which is why it's gone quiet. So obviously he's not in the apartment. I know he posted a prayer card from a Buddhist temple on his Twitter recently that said, "I hope my cats are okay in the apartment." Which, the first thing that jumped to my mind was, why have you left your cats on their own in your apartment?
That's a month ago now.
Yeah. So I kind of don't know where he's going to go next. Maybe he'll get a bit more quote unquote professional, start using a bit more technical art. But so far everything's been so low grade, and it's been so, and his only real attempt at outright fakery, they've been pretty poor. So maybe the whole thing's running out of steam. Maybe he wants it to go away now. I doubt it will, but it's one of the most it's one of the strangest examples of this kind of story that I've ever come across. It's very, very strange. I think it says more about the power of social media than it does about anything paranormal or skepticism or science or anything like that. It says more about how things catch on, how things go viral, and sometimes how things get out of control virally too. And something else I'm waiting for as well is the first copycat, dear David, because we've not seen that yet. And obviously that was a big thing with Slender Man, where it caught on and other people started to report sightings of Slender Man, which obviously, all joking aside, led to some pretty tragic consequences, unfortunately, with the case of the two young girls who stabbed one of their classmates to death, in relation to the Slender Man viral story.
Yeah.
So, I think that's probably the next story beat. And I'm a little confused as to why we've not seen that yet, because I would have expected somebody else to jump onto this, whether well-meaningly or themselves looking for a bit of attention. And it's not happened, which I think for the number of followers he's got, for the number of people he's engaged with the story, I'm very surprised that somebody else hasn't got whiff of this.
Their very own Dear David.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because obviously, we talked earlier about horror movie tropes. Well, horror movies like that that go to painstaking lengths to establish rules always have sequels. So, and the sequels are always much worse than the first ones. So, I'm surprised nobody's jumped on because that was what struck me. He really establishes those rules, like it's a horror movie, like it's laid out for in the the opening scene of The Ring, we're told the rules about watching the videotape.
Yeah.
In the opening scenes of Candyman, we get the rules about saying the name so many times in the mirror. In the opening scenes of Evil Dead, we find out about reading from the book. And in the opening scenes of the Dear David saga, we find out about the 3 questions and you're not to ask them. And I'm surprised nobody's attempted to create a sequel yet.
Well, we're going to have to keep our eye on this story, I feel, Rob. Because I don't think this is the end of Dear David.
No, I don't. I think it'd be really interesting to see where it goes next. Normally I want these things to just go away because I've had enough of them, but I'd be interested to see what his next move is, to be quite honest.
It's going to be incredibly interesting to watch. But we have reached the end of the show. So thank you so much for joining me and actually bringing some things that you need to look at when you're looking at footage to the forefront, because like we've said before, people look at the phenomena, but they forget to look at the environment surrounding the phenomena, which generally gives you clues as to whether or not it's, been edited or faked or, things like that. So, you have got to look at those things. And I'm learning an awful lot from your blog.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's nice to hear, because the idea behind my blog was to show that anyone can do that. There's no special skills that I've got that anybody else doesn't have, but dogged determination to see something through to the end. And with those videos, never have tunnel vision. Always look at the bigger picture. Remember, there's an entire frame there. Slow the video down. That's a brilliant feature of YouTube. You can zoom in, you can slow the video down, and you will find the flaws yourself if you do that. And we'll be reading your blog with it. And the more people that had blogs like that, that'd be amazing. If there was as much accurate information out about viral ghost stories as there is false information, be fantastic.
Very much so. It's a subject I've been coming across more and more recently, more so in regards to false information than looking at photographs or videos. But this is all part of the same thing. It's that you said it earlier regarding magicians, like that misdirection. Yeah. It is incredibly important. If we're going to progress the field, we need to be very, very aware of misdirection in regard to research or photograph footage or video footage. And these are things that we need to learn to help progress the field forward. Like I said, we have come to the end of the show. We're running over now. But thank you so much for joining me. It's an interesting case. I'm sure at some point we will revisit this as this develops, if it does. Yeah,
we'll see what happens next.
We'll keep our little eyes on it, shall we?
Yeah, Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for joining me in the chat room. It's been interesting listening, or not listening, but watching your comments go through. Now, don't forget, we have shows every night of the week apart from Saturdays. On Mondays, we have the Parasearch UK Encore show, and we had a general discussion, and our lovely Richard Clements was throwing out some really hard questions, which made my brains dribble out of my ears. So have a listen to that tomorrow. On Tuesday, it is the Paraforce Aftermath on the Paranormal Concept Show. It's kind of that theme this week regarding the aftermath of all the conventions this week. Then on Tuesday, the Haunted History Show is looking at Hutchingbrook Hall. I've not heard of that location before.
No, I haven't.
So that's going to be always interesting to hear. On Thursday, we've got the KTPF Reload Show. On Friday, the Dark Mirror Show, we have got the lovely Carl Hutchinson on with us to talk about Sage Paracon that went on a couple of weekends ago and tell us his thoughts on Sage Paracon at Warwick Castle. And next Sunday on the Spirit Dimension Show, I am talking to the absolutely amazing Jane Harris, who has just done a documentary on who put Bell in the Witch Elm. So definitely listen to all of the shows that we've got coming up this week. And on that note, I'd like to say thank you so much, Rob, for joining me tonight.
Don't tell Jane Harris you've been
Why?
speaking to me. Don't.
Why?
Don't bring up that. Jane Harris doesn't like me very much.
Oh!
Don't mention Jane Harris. Jane Harris doesn't like me very much. That is so funny. I'm just laughing that Jane Harris would be your next guest on the show. That's so weird.
But her documentary is absolutely amazing. It's well worth watching. It's well researched, beautifully photographed. I'm not quite sure of the right term on that. But anyway, join us all through the week and on Sunday next week. And on that note, I bid you all a very farewell and thank you for joining.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.